Hey everyone, welcome to, and especially Lilly, welcome to Designers in Nature Talking Business.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, for those who don't know, Lilly is actually dMBA alum, and she's also a service designer, coach, facilitator, and innovation coach. Did I get this right?
Yes, yes,
So, you're working as a freelancer.
yes.
And we're going to talk more about this today, I guess. But there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, which is you're also founder of something called IMA Collective, right?
Yeah,
Can you
it's
tell
a
us more about
yeah,
IMA?
it's a collective of experts in the field of climate adaptation. And climate adaptation is not about reducing emission or getting us to net zero, but
Hmm.
actually helping us prepare for the consequences of the climate crisis. So the increased water scarcity or disasters and extreme weather events or migration. So we really focus on what are the impacts and how can we help people and organizations better prepare and adapt to them.
Oh, that's really cool. Is there any public projects? Oh, let me show you. I have a doggo here. Uh, it looks like I'm on a dog's playing ground. Is there any projects that you've already done that maybe you can share briefly?
Yes, so I worked a bit with students, and so we looked at how can we help people better prepare for extreme weather events. And then one of the first projects that I really focused on is actually how can we help people build financial resilience, because
Mm,
all those impacts have an immediate impact on our wallets. And so, how can we actually help people be better prepared for financial shocks? Because we already saw it with the pandemic, now inflation,
yeah.
energy crisis. So sometimes climate adaptation feels like a vitamin problem. So something
Yeah.
that is currently not kind of, we don't have a like a headache, but actually when it comes to our finances, it's already a painkiller problem. So I started with this one.
I think everybody wants to hear like how do you become financially resilient?
Yeah, there are multiple things. I think to some extent, financial institutions didn't really help us to become fully financial resilient
Yeah.
because, of course, they get money from selling us credit cards, loans, and we have no recent things that maybe buy now, pay later. So such as
Mm,
Klarna, but they're actually just a bit exacerbating the kind of cash flow issue. And so
mm,
for us, what we can actually do is one, build an emergency fund, so for
mm,
tough times, but also using a concept called sinking funds. So regularly putting aside money for like expected expenses such as insurances and something, so we don't need to kind of, you know, look for them when a bill comes or an unexpected bill. And then, of course, based on the financial means, financial resilience can mean different things. If you are better off, it might be really looking at your diversification strategy
mm,
of your assets.
mm.
And so there are like multiple aspects that financial resilience actually entails.
Yeah, there's many, but I think you touched upon the biggest one, which is just having some emergency fund. And I've read different. Um, huh, there's just this different advice on how big this emergency fund needs to be. Some people
Yeah.
say 3 months, some people say 6 months. At the end of the day, I think it's important that you have enough. I mean, if you're just starting out, you can't have 3 months right away, but 3 months is kind of, I think, a good starting point for this to have for unexpected expenses, but also if you lose a job and so on.
Yes, absolutely. Or even if you really, really struggle, start with one. And especially if you have
Yes.
debt or high interest debt, then it should have
Yeah.
like 1 month of emergency fund and then paying back the high interest debt. It's not like, yeah, first, so that it doesn't kind of
Yeah.
snowball.
High interest debt is the worst. So if you have this, definitely get it paid off first. But okay, I think we can already see in your background that you've chosen a really beautiful nature for this chat. Can you tell us where you're at?
Yeah, I'm actually at my parents' place in South Tyrol. So that's the Italian Alps. And I grew
Mm,
up on this remote mountain farm. And to go to school, I needed to wear a head torch and cross the forest. So it's really, really more remote.
wow, that's a nice. I mean, it sounds so romantic, but was it romantic when you
Yeah.
actually had to do it?
No, 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 absolutely not. I was envisioning like, no, like kind of bridges because one of my best friends lived actually across the valley, and I have
Mm.
done everything in my life to escape this place. So I actually moved to London, which was the complete opposite to
The
this place.
opposite.
And now I chosen a bit of a middle ground, which usually I'm based in Verona, Italy. So I'm having, a
So close to
mid-sized
mom.
city, still close to
Nice.
my parents' place. So I can visit for the weekend.
I mean, it looks amazing. Can you show us a little bit more? Your
Yeah, sure.
background.
So yeah,
So what's the altitude there?
it's 1,400 meter.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Alrighty. So now that we know where you are, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about what story and what concept you chose to tell us about. So, um, this is Design as Nature Talking Business. So you chose one business concept. Tell us
Yeah.
more about it.
So I chose to talk about the business concept of opportunity cost,
Mm.
which now is an economic term for like the estimated impact of choosing one option instead of another one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe to bring this to life, it might be easier to just tell you a story of which, in like a moment in my life, in which I not just understood the concept, but I really felt the concept.
Yeah. Tell us
So
more.
yeah, so let's move back in time. So it was like 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working for 5 years in the innovation space as a project manager. And I constantly ask myself of how can we make things better? Because sometimes we build digital products or platforms, but we didn't get that much adoption from our users. And so
Mm-hmm.
I discovered the world of design, and particularly service design.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found it, was like, this is what I want to do. And so, but it was a bit hard because actually it was not known at all in Italy. I knew nobody who was doing this job. And so I initially just started learning by myself, reading books, going to conferences, and trying to actually prototype some tiny workshops with friends. And then, but at a certain point, I really wanted to implement it at work, but it was very, very hard. And also, I didn't have mentors or people that I could look up to or even
Mm-hmm.
have a position in that space. And I also didn't have the credentials to get a job
Mm.
in an agency because I really wanted to work in an agency because of the diversity of the sectors and the things that I
Right.
could see. And
Mm.
so I remember this one evening in which I was like, I'm not getting further with this, with my goal. So what can I do? And so I sat down with a glass of wine, as you would do in Italy, and
And some
drew,
pasta.
yeah, probably, and drew like three timelines and I had identified three options. And the first option was a bit like, I just could kind of continue with this kind of self-taught mode in which I was just try to implement it at work and be quite slow in it.
Mm-hmm.
I found a master that was only being a part-time master during the weekend and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to use service design. And I found a master that was like a full-time 1 year in Milan at the Politecnico,
Mm.
which
Great
actually was
school.
the most expensive option. And so, but I think instead of writing pros and cons, I just drew that timeline and I was thinking if I choose like the different options, where would I be in 1 year?
Mm-hmm.
And so, whilst the first two options actually had like, I wouldn't be probably in the same job as now. So I didn't find them appealing. And so the third option was actually, if I do this, I have no clue where I will be next year. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was really exciting, but also scary at the same time. Because, of course, when I then evaluated that option, I understood that that was actually the most expensive option, not just because it had a high tuition fee. And also, I needed, at least during the time of the master, move to Milan
Mm-hmm.
or find a flat there, which is an expensive city. But also there was this hidden cost that I have not considered, which was actually missing out on a salary for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a bit of the opportunity cost because probably all the other options had, I still would have the salary. I would just do the thing at the side. And so maybe let's make up some numbers. So if the last option would cost like effectively for tuition and also like traveling, all extra cost might be like 20K, it
Mm-hmm.
had an additional, I don't know, 40K of my salary. So this whole master would cost me 60K.
Yeah.
And so when I realized it when I did the master, then I really chose it because I thought, let's take this risk.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I behaved very differently compared to maybe other students in the master who have never
Mm-hmm.
been in a job, because I was really like insisting on getting a good internship, trying to already find like side jobs at the side,
Yeah.
plus also kind of prototyping first workshops that I could potentially sell to
Uh-huh.
clients. So yeah, or writing about my work, which actually then helped me. I wrote one article, and that helped
Mm-hmm.
me land then a job in London at an agency.
Oh,
So
how did that work?
so the this interesting thing, because I needed really to budget during this master to make it my ends meet, and so I didn't rent out an entire room, but I actually found it was cheaper to um, basically use Airbnb, but
Mm-hmm.
not the private apartment, but the shared, just the room, no? And so
Uh-huh.
during this 6 months where we had class, every week I would change host and home.
Oh, wow.
And so that was quite an experiment in terms of empathy. And I wrote an article about this, and that
Mm-hmm.
got some attention because it was quite a crazy experiment.
Uh-huh.
And so a headhunter from London contacted me and said, "Are you available for some work in London or to
Mm.
move to London?"
Mm.
And I said, "I'm still doing the master, but I will finish in September." And
Mm.
so, yeah, he contacted me in September. And then within a week, I actually had a job in London.
Nice.
And the thing also about this job was that I accepted a bit the first opportunity because there weren't that many in Italy. And so I wasn't very picky. And I thought, okay, this is my chance. This is my ticket.
Mm.
And I also did like not a really good job in negotiating my salary, actually none at all. And so I remember being just 1 week before moving to London, I turned 30. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt the biggest loser ever, in the sense that I felt I haven't achieved anything. I just finished studying. I had not negotiated a good job, or kind of needed to really understand how to make things work in London, which was even more expensive than Milan.
Okay.
And and
So
so, but
even though you kind
yeah.
of achieved your goal, which was like a year before, a few months before, you said, "I want to take this program because I want to get a job as a designer," and then you got the job, you felt like a loser. But like, why?
Yeah, I think it was a bit like I got the job, but it was like I think a bit of a combination of things, because it was also when I turned 30, the day before my younger sister got married, and it felt like, no, she's been like, you compare yourself sometimes, and I
Yeah,
felt
all the
like I
time.
really started. I didn't do this. I had basically the salary was an entry level, although I had like really experience in this innovation space. But what I then did, and I think that was a really good lesson for me, is like I said, okay, let me, because the salary is not, and I didn't really negotiate, and I really was like ruminating on it. And so I said, I wrote this, work your ass off, somewhere on a post-it note in my room, like in London.
Mm-hmm.
And then for 3, 4 months, I really worked super hard to demonstrate my value.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to my boss and I said, listen, I really like it here. I really
Mm-hmm.
like the job that I'm doing, but I'm struggling to actually give 100%, because I know, and I realized once I moved to London, that I was definitely undervalued and underpaid. And
Mm.
so, can we review my salary? Because I want to stay here, but I really struggle to motivate myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I also demonstrated to you that I bring a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a lot of transferable expertise and experiences from my previous work as a project manager. And so they actually raised my salary I got an increase of 50%, which was like, wow, I didn't
Mm.
expect that. And so also, no, that was then probably understanding that it was then I also was able to really calculate the return on investment compared to
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity cost that I made in terms of investing like 1 year of like training and becoming a service designer. And then seeing like, how does it impact my salary? Because probably if I stayed in the job, that salary would have stayed more or less the same.
Right.
It wouldn't have changed so dramatically, and probably even more now after gaining more experience in this field. I can definitely say that in terms of return of investment, the thing paid off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's also now estimating opportunity cost is sometimes not so easy.
It
You need to
is.
do a bit of a guesstimate,
Yeah.
and then see how things play out.
It's one of those things when you hear about opportunity costs, it feels like it's a mathematical concept because you can assign a financial value to a missed opportunity. Uh, but it's like many other business things where actually the monetary value is, you don't know exactly what it is, but you can just kind of estimate it. And that kind of gives you just the sense of which is it big, is it medium, or is it low? And even this is enough to take a decision. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is becoming much more than just opportunity cost chat. We're talking about negotiations and so on. So I hope this also motivates someone to go and talk to their boss about renegotiating salary. But I want to ask you about the opportunity cost. So we kind of now laid the foundation of what it is and how it affected you with this decision. But since I like what you said in the beginning, which is you kind of know and understand the concept only when you kind of live through it. Because when you read about it, it's just like so,
Yeah,
it's almost like theory, but once you live through it, you kind of really understand it. So, what I want to hear is once you really understood it and felt it, so opportunity cost, how did it translate to your work? You know, as a
yeah.
designer, how does it impact your project?
Definitely, it shows up so many times in our work, in the sense that, no, like we, like as a person, also businesses, they have just limited time, money, or people available, resources, and so what you need to do is really make those strategic choices in what do you invest your time, resource, and money in. And so, constantly, when you do this as a designer, it sometimes could be about, no, what value proposition do you take forward? What kind of, no, what concept do you move forward? Even what, no, in what market segments are you designing for? So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, and understanding this is key, but I think also it ties in a bit to, like, what is the strategy that the company has? What are their
Mm-hmm.
business goals?
Mm-hmm.
Because to make those choices, you need to understand what options are actually delivering the greatest value or having the best return. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think also a concrete way of how designers can do this is like, we might not have the full picture within the
Mm-hmm.
organization, because we might just look at how can we improve the experience, no, or for the customers, or even for the employees. But what we can ask, we are really good at asking questions. So
Mm-hmm.
I think when we speak with stakeholders or decision makers, we could ask them, no, if you would have an extra, I don't know, 10 or 100K, where would you invest it that delivers the biggest value? Or if no, if we're in a business and we have just a few months of cash left, how would you spend your time and resources, and what would you spend them on? So you
Mm-hmm.
could identify what their perspective is on those elements that have the biggest leverage point, because
Mm-hmm.
we can't invest and improve everything, so we need to very carefully choose.
That's a cool approach. I'll share another one. So, what we do a lot of times when we're suggesting things, we are just saying what we're saying yes to. And imagine maybe when you're just doing your project, you could have a last slide where you actually also do and say what you're saying no to. You know, so
Yes.
like, hey, by saying yes to this thing, we're saying no to many other things, and then just also making it very visible for decision makers what we are not gonna do if we do this thing. Because sometimes they're just also afraid of making a decision because they don't know what else they could have done with this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point, and I think uh, another aspect I think is very important now is the importance of customers, and I think that's very core to design, on understanding the customer and designing for them, because a business exists only as long as we have customers.
Mm.
And so really like understanding how can we drive and deliver more value to them is a key aspect that designers can do. And so also to give maybe a concrete example, I was working on a project in which the company has invested some money in doing market research, and so the market research helped them understand like who is their customers and what are the different segments that they have, and also what is the percentage of those segments. No, let's say they have 1, 2, 3 segments, and they decided then to pick one or two, but then we designers were actually tasked to better understand why they use our service and how they use it. So we did user research because that really helped us to understand those questions. And so by doing that, we really understood that it doesn't make much sense to do the choice that they made to focus on segment 1 and 3, but actually segment 1 and 2 would be much better because we actually could capture more market value by designing one service that fits two needs, because segment 3 had very different needs and needed a different app almost or experience. And
Mm.
so that was also a way of how we then as designers could just needed to calculate a bit like no, by having those numbers from the market research, we could estimate like what is the market share that we are leaving out and what makes more sense, and also what what would be the estimate of developing certain features that work for a certain segment.
That's
And
cool.
if you have like segment that have opposing needs and need opposing features, then you need to develop many more features, and that's
Mm.
a lot of more money,
Yeah.
time, and resources.
And how did you get these numbers? Who did you talk to?
So basically, they had a market research company who really like surveyed a large number of population to then define the segments, and then we did a bit of a smaller qualitative study in terms
Mm.
of understanding really their experience and mapping it out, and what they also define as success criteria, of
Mm-hmm.
what a successful experience looks like, and then we validated that again with kind of a quantitative survey to really prioritize their jobs to be done, so their needs, and to put things together. But I think to make this very compelling to decision makers, you really need to translate what we do as designers to the impact that it has on the business or
Yeah,
the
right.
potential impact.
And it goes back to this thing that actually we don't need to have all these answers. We need like good questions,
Yeah.
and once we have these questions, we can also just get these numbers. Let's go to the final part. I have one last question about the buzzwords. You know, what's your least and or most favorite business buzzword that you hear in the business or design communities?
I would say least favorite is actually MVP, so minimal viable product, because we
It's a
use it all
classic.
the time, but everybody has a different understanding of what it actually means. And
Mm.
so I think as a designer, I always like to ask the question, so what do you mean by it? And ask every single one person to really like help me understand what they mean by it. Sometimes it's just a kind of, it almost means like a concept that you test, or
Mm-hmm.
like, no, a kind of fake door test. And for others, it actually is like a fully built thing. Um, or even like now when we were developing a new financial product, some were like, is real money involved or not? So kind of really defining it, because otherwise you constantly see it. And it's also,
Mm.
it often shows up in OKRs or no objectives that you need to deliver an MVP. But then if we don't show examples, that's another way of like, apart from asking questions like, give me an example or show me an example of how this should look like, to really make it concrete and tangible.
That's a really good point because when we talk about MVPs, probably every person in the room has a different understanding of what that minimum actually means.
Yes.
Yeah, as you said, is money involved? Is something else involved? Like, what are we really trying to prove? And that's the point, I think, which is like, what are we trying to prove with the MVP? Like, what is the assumption behind this product that the MVP should prove or disprove? And by actually defining the assumption, I think you're just making it much more clear what the MVP needs to do in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Cool,
Great.
Lily. Thanks a lot for taking the time, showing us your beautiful, should I call it hometown or home village? Or I mean,
Yeah,
it looks amazing.
it's just very tiny village. Yeah, home tiny village.
I mean, as much as you said you didn't like growing up there, I guess now you enjoy going back, right?
Yes, I think there is always a bit kind of a conflicting part of me that really enjoys spending some time there, but then I'm like really happy also like to leave, and I'm even more happy that now we can work remotely, and so having the
Yeah,
chance to work from here, but to still like be connected to people in different parts of the world is such a
exactly,
privilege.
exactly. Just like we are right now.
Yeah,
Amazing. Thanks, Lily. Have a
thank
very
you so
beautiful day,
much. Likewise.
and see you in the community. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye bye.